All right, Avery, now this is your moment. I know you've been itching to talk about this. Kevin Durant obviously said he's weighing his options. Reportedly, he hasn't told the Nets that he would leave if Kyrie gets traded or if that ends up happening. But there's a lot of questions surrounding what would happen with KD. So what do you make of this all, Avery?
Well, if Kyrie Irving is not going to be in a Brooklyn Nets uniform, there's no way that Kevin Durant stays around for some sort of a rebuild. He didn't sign up for this. This guy, had an opportunity. He could have stayed with the Golden State Warriors and he'd have another championship ring. But he wanted to go out. He wanted to lead a team of his own, just same way he led the Golden State Warriors. This idea that Kevin Durant wasn't the bus driver for the Golden State Warriors that I've heard from certain analysts. He was the bus driver. Go back and look at his numbers in both of those fine championship NBA finals. But I think in this situation, Kevin Durant wants to further cement his illustrious career. And if Kyrie Irving is not going to be around, his buddy James Harden already forced his way out of Brooklyn to Philadelphia because Kyrie refused to get the vaccination during the COVID protocols. I don't see Kevin Durant sticking around for a rebuild.
Yeah, I'm with Coach, and I think the Miami Heat would be a really interesting place to keep an eye on. Let me use this as an opportunity to tell a quick story. I was with an Eastern Conference GM at the start of the season, and we were just shooting the breeze and gossiping, and I brought up Kyrie Irving. And this GM must have spent 5 minutes giving me a breakdown of all the things he thought were wrong with Kyrie Irving on and off the floor in terms of this is before obviously Kyrie didn't show up in the entirety of the season. Just he walked me through what was a laundry list of reasons to stay away from Kyrie Irving. So I said to him, "Oh, so you wouldn't sign him, you wouldn't bring him in here if you had the chance." And he leaned back, made a face, and said, "Oh no, I'd bring him in. He's too talented." This should be a warning to every GM of every organization we've just discussed, I think, about bringing in Kyrie Irving. Because we're discussing now that if Kyrie leaves, if he doesn't opt into this deal, if he doesn't do what he said he was going to do when he said he wanted to return to Brooklyn, the Nets are an absolute dumpster fire. Because Coach is right. Kevin Durant's going to try to go play somewhere else. All the pieces they moved for James Harden and for Kyrie Irving, all these really, I think, impressive pieces that were part of a rebuild that was working are playing somewhere else. We don't know what Ben Simmons is ever going to be. And I think this is the danger you run with Kyrie Irving when you build around this guy. Because Coach is right. If Kyrie leaves, and it certainly sounds like he's going to, if he doesn't leverage the Nets to make some sort of U-turn, maybe they will, Kevin Durant is going to look for greener pastures. And I think it's a reminder that talent's great, but you want talented players who are not going to burn your organization to the ground.
So, Bill, I want to expand on that real quick. So say it does happen. KD and Kyrie are out. What does this mean for the Nets and their rebuild? What do they do?
I mean, yeah, what it means is a really long couple nights for Sean Marks. And I think it's not a start. They're not starting over because the irony here, and I think the catch-22 is that the Brooklyn Nets and the organization, the front office that's in place now, inherited one of the most difficult rebuilds, maybe in basketball history. When you go back to that trade back when they were in Jersey with the Celtics that left them totally without draft picks of any substance for a really long time. Now, it's a market that's shown that it can be attractive. It's a market that's shown that it can be successful. So they certainly, I think, have some success in free agency down the road. They have a vision they can sell. But a lot of the pieces that they needed, a lot of the guys that were Karis LeVert and other names like that are no longer there. And so it would go from a rebuild on the run if Kevin Durant stuck around to an absolute rebuild. And that's 2 or 3 years. You have to do it right. You have to draft properly. You have to make moves. They would go from being a contender to an absolute disaster overnight.
Coach, you've been there, former head coach of the Nets there. Are you glad you don't have to deal with all of this right now?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't trade my seat for anything. And I think Steve Nash is going to want to trade his seat because I think at the end of the day, if they have to rebuild, this is not what Steve Nash signed up for. Remember, they were trying to recreate what the Golden State Warriors did by bringing in Steve Kerr with no head coaching experience. You know, he takes over for Mark Jackson and obviously has gone on and put in the work and wildly been successful. They tried to recreate that wheel with Steve Nash, and it's just basically going the opposite direction for a variety of reasons. So I think at the end of the day, I somewhat disagree with my buddy Bill. I think if Kevin Durant leaves, and follows Kyrie Irving out of the door. This is an absolute rebuild, and I think it's going to take more than 2 years. They don't have enough infrastructure. What Cam Thomas, Blake Griffin? No, they're going to be a bottom feeder. This team will be one of the worst teams, probably one of the worst 2 or 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. They can't even make it through a playing game or a first conference series against getting swept by the Boston Celtics. So I think they completely go the opposite direction. And then you have to question whether Steve Nash wants to stay around for this rebuild.
Well, Avery, we're certainly glad that you're on this side with us. Bill, always a pleasure, but you two don't go anywhere. We got lots more to chat about. We're going to continue this NBA discussion as we take a look at some off-season dates. So obviously the draft took place last night. Next up, free agency begins on June 30th. And then, of course, we have the Vegas Summer League taking place July 7th through the 17th. And sometime in September, training camps begin. So it's not so far away.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.